Hey, it's Dr. Reyes, Tuppy Doc. Hey, I want to share with you the two most important views that I teach my patients in my practice about MyFitnessPal. Hopefully, this will help you in your weight journey. So let's get started. So take a look at this. This is the weekly view that I teach my patients about net goal, net calories. So that means exercise is subtracted out. On the left view, if you see red, that could mean that they're overeating. And that's usually a good thing in my practice because that means I usually got to titrate something or we might need to go up on appetite suppression. On the right side over here, you can see that they're under eating. And I teach them that they need to watch that after 48 hours, they need to eat. But there's a limitation to this model. So that's why we need two views. So let me go over this again. So here's another net view where someone's overeating on the left side and then they try to compensate over here and then they overeat again. Now on the right side, they're clearly undereating. Look, if you're undereating on the net view and the numbers are accurate, it doesn't matter what the macros are, you are undereating. And so you got to bring in more carbohydrates usually, especially if someone's like marathon training or something like that. And that exercise is accounted for. But let's say it is red. You're on the left side here and you're like, but you don't feel good during workouts. You need to click on the macro button up top right over there and it'll give you this view. So here's an example where someone's red on the left, and then this is an Android version of MyFitnessPal, and then they clicked on the macro on the right, and you can see here their carb percentage. There's only really two numbers that we care about, that I teach my patients that I care about in this view. It's going to be the carb percentage here, and then the protein second. Okay, so let me go over this carb percentage. I set my patients at 40, 30, 30 because if they are sedentary, that's a minimum amount of carbohydrates they should eat, assuming that their net calories over here are good. So if they're red or even and they're hitting 40%, I tell them that's a minimum. It really should be higher. It's a minimum. So is this 46% adequate for that patient? Well, the other part is having the clinical picture of the patient in front of me. So if they're exercising and they're doing well, and maybe that 46% is good enough. But I'm going to tell you, usually someone is working out or does tons of physical activity and they're eating 40% carbs and they're overeating like that, they do not usually feel well. They're not optimized. And I recommend that they go 50 to 60% carbs. If you're like training for marathons or triathlons, you're probably going to be hitting 60 to 70% carbs. If you think about the math of it, if you're burning more energy, that means you got to consume more energy, which is carbs. Carbs are the energy of the body. And therefore the denominator or the quantity of grams of carbs goes up, therefore the percentage goes up. So I like to use that as a certain rule for people just getting started. I know you bodybuilders out there got it down to the grams. You know how many grams of carbs you need to cut. You know how many grams of carbs you need to bulk. Okay, we're dealing with a different population here. I'm talking about people who are sedentary, non-bodybuilding people. And that's why I like to use a quick and easy rule of keep that percentage of carbohydrates a minimum 40% if you're sedentary. And if you're getting active and getting close to athletics, it's 50 to 60% or higher. Now, I always teach my patients, it's carbs first, protein second. So right now in our culture, everything's about protein, 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 and fats. I'm telling you that's wrong, at least for what we do in obesity medicine, especially if you're on GLP-1s, okay? So in the Android view, this gives you a daily average if your numbers are good. So looking at protein is the second thing I look at. I usually give my patients a protein range. In the Apple version, it'll give you the total for the week of your protein. We usually keep our proteins pretty good. That's the real truth. So focusing on protein first is wrong when you're under in my practice. It's not optimal. I say, hey, watch this first because I find people are undercarbing. I always say when you're on medications, you have a higher risk of underfueling, which means undercarbing than you do of overcarbing at that point. So this is how we confirm that if you're overeating and you feel bad, this is why, because you are deficient on carbs. Now, what I also show people is if you're red here, you're killing your workouts, you feel great, your carbs are 50, 60, 70%, that's an indication to go up on appetite suppression. So that's how I manage my patients, how I empower my patients, that they can look back and say, hey, what's going on? I'm not optimal, but you're red. Because if you're eating a bunch of peanuts and avocado, bacon, you're doing the carnivore diet, you're drinking olive oil, guess what? This is going to be super red all over the place. You're going to look like you're picking out like no other, but those are calories your body cannot use. And so when you click on the macro button over here, you're going to see that your carbs are down to 20, 30%. And most of this is fat and protein. And you're wondering why you can't perform physically. Okay. Because you're not fueling. I hope that helps. I'll see you at the next video.